At the time, Rafi Sutton was the commander of Unit 504, a covert intelligence branch within Israel's military, specializing in clandestine operations behind enemy lines. During a routine visit to Bethlehem, he was walking through the corridors of the local administration building, not far from the back of the Church of the Nativity. In one of the halls, he met Moshe Davash, the police attaché assigned to the area. Without much context, Moshe asked if he wanted to see something unusual. He led Rafi to a quiet spot behind the building, overlooking the church courtyard. They sat along the fence, waiting. Then, a woman stepped out, lit a cigarette, took a few long drags, and went back inside. Then again, 15 minutes later, she reappeared. Another cigarette. Then back inside. And again. Her behavior caught Rafi's attention. There was something about her that drew his interest. And he decided to approach her. Modern times. Arab women smoking cigarettes in public. Those were the first words Rafi Sutton said when he saw her. "Who are you?" she asked. "Just an Arabic teacher," Sutton replied. She lit another cigarette and said something unexpected. "If you knew what was going on inside, you wouldn't be commenting on my chain smoking." Inside, she explained, there were around 15 to 20 monks and nuns, psychologically scarred by the war, and she was the one tasked with taking care of them. She introduced herself as a doctor of mental sciences. She had been running the mental health department at Bethlehem's main hospital for 2 years. The head of the monastery had contacted the mayor, asking for help. So the mayor sent her. When Sutton asked for her name, she said simply, "Dr. Amina al-Mufti." Rafi raised an eyebrow. "You mean like Saeed al-Mufti? The former Prime Minister of Jordan?" She looked at him and said, "Yes. He's my father." Amina does indeed belong to the al-Mufti family, a Jordanian family of Circassian origin, but she was not the Prime Minister's daughter. Instead, she is said to have been the niece of his brother Muhammad, who married a woman of European descent. After that first encounter, Rafi Sutton wasn't ready to walk away. They continued their conversation over coffee in the office of Sutton's friend, Moshe Davash, a modest, dimly lit room tucked inside the Bethlehem administration building. There, with the sound of the city just beyond the walls, Amina began to open up. She spoke plainly, with quiet confidence. A Jordanian Muslim, born in Amman in 1939, the eldest of 3 sisters. Her roots, she explained, traced back to the Circassian community, Muslims who had fled religious persecution in the Caucasus Mountains and resettled in the Hashemite kingdom. She was highly educated, sharp, and assertive, a rare combination in that time and place. As their conversation deepened, something unexpected surfaced. She expressed a deep hostility toward Palestinians, not politically motivated, but personal, emotional. Sutton listened carefully. For an intelligence officer, moments like this weren't casual, they were windows into motive. Into loyalty. Or disloyalty. He saw potential. And so did his superiors. Soon after, Amina was recruited. The next chapter of her life unfolded in the shadows. In the years that followed her recruitment, Amina underwent intensive training in the core disciplines of espionage, from mastering clandestine radio transmitters to operating complex message coding and decoding systems. She was trained in photographic surveillance, taught how to disappear in plain sight, and how to operate without leaving a trace. Amina's training likely took place across Europe, in Geneva, Vienna, and possibly Rome. While in Vienna, she enrolled in advanced university-level psychology courses, giving her not just a credible academic cover, but also a sharper operational edge, something that would later make her even more effective in the field. The transformation was swift and absolute, from respected mental health doctor to covert intelligence asset. From caregiver to invisible operative. By 1971, Rafi Sutton was heading the Mossad office in one of the European capitals. He received a message from headquarters in Israel. A source from the European network was being reassigned, and he was to coordinate the transition. No name was given, only instructions to meet the person at a cafe in Geneva airport. When Sutton arrived at the meeting point, Amina appeared. At the time, Amina was already a professor of mental health. She had come to Switzerland with the intention of finding medical work in Geneva, but Swiss regulations at the time prevented foreign resident doctors from practicing medicine. Despite this, Amina chose to remain in Switzerland. From that point on, she continued her role as a Mossad agent, operating from European territory. After Amina agreed to continue her work with Mossad from Switzerland, Sutton gave her a clear first task: start integrating into Arab society in Geneva. The city had a significant Arab population, and at the time, there was an active Fatah presence, either operating from Switzerland or using it as a key transit point. Sutton saw value in positioning her close to those networks. After a few months of careful observation, and in consultation with his superiors, Sutton moved to place her inside the offices of the Arab League in Geneva. The decision was strategic. A lot of information moved through that office, and it functioned as a channel for political coordination among Arab entities in Europe. With her academic background and personal identity, Amina was well suited for the role and could blend in without raising suspicion. Amina began working there sometime in 1972. Her posting inside the Arab League offices in Geneva seemed like a masterstroke of espionage. The access, the contacts, the flow of information, everything pointed to a valuable long-term asset. But history would remember it differently. What began as a promising infiltration would ultimately unravel into one of Mossad's most significant failures. By mid-1973, Amina was well established inside the Arab League offices. It was from here that she passed along what would become her most consequential piece of intelligence. Sutton, ever cautious, worried that someone might try to follow Amina. To reduce the risk, he decided to limit his direct contact with her. Instead, he gave her 2 telephone numbers and clear instructions: if she had urgent news, she could call. The only request: speak in English. Not everyone at his location spoke Arabic, and it would help keep attention away from their exchanges. That became their arrangement, and for many months they operated in this discreet manner. Before leaving for a month-long visit to Israel, Sutton informed her he wouldn't be in Geneva. In his absence, any urgent information should be passed directly to his deputy. Weeks later, in early July 1973, the phone rang. On the other end was Amina, reporting that Ali Hassan Sollame, the man believed to be the mastermind behind the Munich Olympic massacre, was scheduled to travel from Geneva to Oslo on Swissair. She provided the flight number, the date, and the time. And then, before hanging up, she added a single word: maybe. She stressed it enough that her deputy understood the nuance. The intelligence was uncertain, but important enough to pass immediately down the chain in Israel. It was an unusual qualifier, but the implications were serious. Even if there was uncertainty, the possibility that Sollame might be within reach was enough to mobilize action. Sutton's deputy relayed the intelligence straight to Mossad headquarters in Israel. In Israel, the intelligence set plans into motion almost immediately. Surveillance teams were readied, operatives briefed. Within days, a Mossad team was on the ground in the small town of Lillehammer in Norway, tracking the man they believed was Sollame. Surveillance reports came back confirming the target. Or so they thought. On July 21, 1973, Mossad agents in Norway moved to intercept their target. Shots were fired. The target fell. Hours later, the truth surfaced. The man lying dead in the street was not Ali Hassan Sollame. He was Ahmed Bouchiki, a 30-year-old Moroccan waiter who had no connection to terrorism. The fallout was immediate. Norwegian police quickly unraveled the plot, arresting several Mossad operatives. The incident became known worldwide as the Lillehammer affair, one of Mossad's most damaging failures. And the trail that led to it began in a small office in Geneva, with a single phone call, from Amina al-Mufti, and one uncertain word: maybe. Upon Sutton's return to Europe, the scale of the Lillehammer debacle was already clear. Mossad operatives had been arrested, international headlines blazed, and the political fallout was severe. Meeting with Amina again, Sutton brought up the call that had set the chain of events in motion. She repeated what she had told his deputy, that she had stressed the word maybe. Sutton knew the nuance of that word had been acknowledged, yet the outcome was still disastrous. Quietly, he began to question her judgment and the risks she might pose in future operations. Before his posting in Europe came to an end, Sutton took a step he considered necessary. He opened her personal file and marked it with 2 red lines, a clear internal warning. In his final written assessment, he stated that, because of her lack of caution, she should never be deployed on any mission inside a target Arab country. Despite the warning, Amina remained active as a Mossad agent. The shadow of Lillehammer still lingered, as did Sutton's doubts about her judgment, but operational needs outweighed reservations, and so Amina received the instructions of her new mission, to infiltrate the Palestinian neighborhoods and locate the PLO's military installations in Lebanon. Amina arrived in Lebanon sometime in 1974 with what was believed to be an airtight cover, a European-educated doctor returning to the Middle East to help her fellow Arabs. On paper, she had savings in a Geneva bank, a family history that placed her years abroad, and a brother still living in Switzerland. Every name, address, and document could be verified, as Mossad had people ready to pose as relatives or confirm her story. Initially, she kept regular office hours, working from a small clinic that also housed her apartment. But word spread quickly, she would travel anywhere, at any hour, for a patient. Before long, she was moving through every layer of the community, treating PLO fighters, Palestinian families, and Lebanese civilians. She often traveled south to the crowded camps in Sidon and Tyre, where people lived in small shacks without toilets, heating, or running water. Disease spread easily: dysentery, hepatitis, malnutrition. Her visits to Red Crescent facilities were ostensibly to check on medical supplies, but they also served as cover for gathering intelligence on PLO officials, weapons caches, and planned military operations. In some hospitals, she discovered crates labeled medicine that in reality contained Soviet-made rocket launchers and explosives. Amina's training allowed her to distinguish between ordinary Lebanese fishing boats and PLO vessels disguised for military use. These ships carried customized cranes to lower rubber dinghies used for nighttime raids on Israel, different from the standard cranes designed for fishing nets. All the intelligence Amina gathered, she passed on to Mossad officers in Tel Aviv using a custom-made transmitter no larger than a pack of cigarettes, which she kept hidden inside her bathroom scale. The device allowed her to transmit signals up to 250 miles. Whenever Amina needed to send photos, she was instructed to arrive at a designated hotel at a specific time, check into a room, conceal the package, and then leave. Later, a Mossad courier would enter the room, retrieve the photographs, and catch the next flight to Tel Aviv. The details, location, date, and time changed with each exchange. Amina never learned who the courier was. Over the months, Amina's intelligence work had become increasingly valuable. Her reports allowed Israel's Air Force and anti-terrorist squads to identify PLO targets hidden among civilians in the crowded refugee camps. Amina's cover had been holding until September 8, 1975, when she set out on a reconnaissance mission. She stopped her car near a Fatah compound at a location that remains undisclosed to this day. From her seat, she raised a pair of compact binoculars, scanning the high-walled compound. She counted guards, noted their movements, details she planned to transmit that night. But the sun's reflection on her binoculars gave her away. A nearby patrol spotted her and immediately reported the incident. Within minutes, armed men surrounded her car. She was dragged out, searched, and taken to a Fatah security facility for interrogation. In the following days, Amina endured repeated beatings, sleep deprivation, and intense psychological pressure to reveal her contacts and mission. The interrogators alternated between threats, false promises, and violence to break her resolve. After the questioning ended, she was moved to her long-term prison, a narrow cave carved into rock. There were no windows, no light, and barely enough room to stand. The air was damp and stale, the floor cold earth. Food was minimal and often spoiled, water was rationed, and she suffered untreated illnesses and infections. She was also subjected to sexual abuse as part of her captivity. Ali Hassan Solameh argued for her execution, but Yasser Arafat decided she could be valuable for a future prisoner exchange. She survived, but the decision meant years in total isolation, never once seeing daylight. After nearly 5 years in captivity, negotiations between Israel and Fatah, conducted quietly through intermediaries, finally led to an agreement. On February 13, 1980, Amina was exchanged for 2 Palestinian prisoners held in Israel, Mehdi Bseiso and William Nassar. The exchange took place on the island of Cyprus, at Larnaca International Airport. The Red Cross supervised the process, ensuring both sides honored the agreement. For Amina, it marked the end of almost half a decade in darkness. Upon her arrival in Israel, Amina was taken straight to a hospital. Years of captivity had left her body broken and her health in ruins. Surgeons worked to reconstruct her shattered jaw, replace her teeth, and fit her with a wig to cover the hair that had thinned and fallen out during her imprisonment. When she was well enough, she was given a new identity, Dr. Ruth Nisonoff, complete with a new date of birth and an Israeli ID card. After her initial recovery, she was quietly relocated to Kibbutz Magen Michael. Her small room was next to the Alpon, where new immigrants studied Hebrew. In the afternoons, she joined the Parents' Club, keeping to herself at a corner table with a sewing machine. There was always underwear from the kibbutz clothing warehouse that needed new elastic, and she worked at it methodically, almost mechanically. Amina spoke to very few people. The years in captivity had aged her far beyond her actual age. Her face still showed the marks of her injuries, her expression often vacant, and she chain-smoked constantly. Those who saw her remember a woman who seemed at once present and far away, her body free, but her mind still trapped in the cave where she had spent nearly 5 years. After about a year in the kibbutz, Amina was given a small apartment in Ramat Aviv and a car from Mossad. With her new identity, Dr. Ruth Nisonoff, she tried to build her life in Tel Aviv. She found work as a psychiatrist in the anesthesia department at Sheba Medical Center, a unit headed by Dr. Yona Elian, the same doctor who had sedated Adolf Eichmann during Mossad's legendary capture. But Amina was far from stable. Years in captivity had left deep scars, not just on her body but on her mind. She had very few social contacts, and even those who worked alongside her sensed something unsettled in her. Dr. Rosa Scheiber, a senior anesthesiologist at Sheba at the time, recalled her clearly. "My strongest memory of her is the cigarettes. She smoked constantly. If a surgery went on too long and she couldn't smoke, she would become irritated, restless. Sometimes I had to replace her so she could step out for a cigarette." Her work, too, showed cracks. She never worked alone, always requiring a specialist beside her. Colleagues quietly admitted they had to keep a close eye on her, worried she might make mistakes if left unsupervised. It was as if she had been pushed into a profession that didn't suit her, one that required focus and calm she no longer possessed. Socially, she remained closed off. She spoke little Hebrew and rarely engaged in conversation. When someone tried to talk to her about personal matters, she would abruptly change the subject, unwilling, or unable, to open up. And then, without warning, she disappeared. One day she was there in the department, withdrawn and smoking in the hallways. The next, she was gone. No explanations, no goodbyes. After leaving Sheba Medical Center, Amina, now living as Dr. Ruth Nisonoff, shifted to quieter work. She found employment at a hotel by the Dead Sea, treating psoriasis patients with special remedies and creams. Neighbors in Ramat Aviv later recalled how, on weekends, the stairwell of her building was filled with the sharp smell of the treatments she mixed at home. In time, she moved to Hadera, where she lived for several years before relocating again. By the 1990s, she decided to start her own practice. She opened a modest clinic in Nazareth, specializing in skin problems, and settled there. During this period, she grew close to the Muslim family of one of her patients. That family was connected to an imam who had been imprisoned in Israel for incitement. In 1994, After Israel signed its peace agreement with Jordan and the border opened, Amina traveled to Amman to see her relatives for the first time since her capture. The reunion was not simple. At first, her family kept their distance. Over time, however, relations were mended, and she made several more visits in the years that followed. By 2008, her ties in Israel had narrowed. That year, she drafted a will leaving all her property and assets to the Imam's family. Soon after, she left Israel behind and returned to Jordan. Later that year, at the age of 69, Amina al-Mufti died in Amman. She was buried there, her grave marking the end of a life lived between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. According to the Mossad, Amina al-Mufti is remembered as one of their most remarkable and dedicated agents. She was a strong, courageous woman, driven not by personal gain but by conviction, with a profound belief in the mission she had undertaken. Her handlers later recalled that they had never encountered an operative quite like her, someone who consistently refused financial reward, accepting money only when absolutely necessary. For Amina, espionage was not a profession but a cause. Every risk she took, every report she sent, was motivated by ideology and by her sense of purpose. This unwavering commitment made her invaluable in a world where loyalty was often measured by pay. Her years in captivity, the brutality she endured, and the psychological scars left by nearly 5 years of imprisonment shaped her in ways that followed her for the rest of her life. She struggled with isolation, trust, and intimacy, and her behavior after returning to Israel often reflected the deep trauma she had suffered. Yet, despite the trauma, her legacy within the Mossad remained clear. She was one of their bravest, most selfless agents, a woman who carried her mission with uncompromising resolve. Amina's story is one of sacrifice, resilience, and complexity. She lived between worlds, belonging fully to none, but leaving behind a legacy that Israel's intelligence community continues to honor. And in the end, her life reminds us that behind every intelligence operation lies immense personal risk and enduring psychological cost, a human being who must carry the weight of secrecy, sacrifice, and survival long after the mission is over.